I'd spent a few days in Austin hanging out with friends. I'm from Louisiana, so it's a solid all-day haul to get there. On my final day, my old high school buddy Tom slid into my Instagram story comments asking when I was heading out. I told him I was leaving that day, and he mentioned he lived about an hour outside Austin, conveniently along my route home. It had been years since I'd last seen him, and I figured it'd be cool to reconnect. He invited me to swing by, and I thought, why not? I punched his address into my GPS, estimated travel time, an hour and a half. Tom and I go way back to high school, but we drifted apart after graduation. We kept tabs on each other through social media, though we hadn't actually talked in forever. When I rolled up to his place, the house struck me as old school, not falling apart, just weathered. The wooden porch groaned under my weight, and as Tom opened the door, I caught a whiff of aged timber mixed with something earthy, like a cabin tucked deep in the woods. He greeted me with a bear hug and ushered me inside, his warmth unchanged despite the years. Some friendships just hold steady, no matter how long it's been. The interior matched the exterior, vintage vibes all the way. The furniture screamed 1970s, and every step on the hardwood floors triggered a faint creak. It had a Texas charm to it, like a time capsule with character. We plopped down in his living room, sipping whiskey and swapping life updates. Tom's always been a whiskey guy. Back in the day, he'd order a Jack and Coke every time. It was around 5 p.m. when we started, and one drink became two, then three. Before long, I was buzzed. The whiskey's heat shrank the room, making it feel snug yet oddly oppressive. Time flew, hours felt like minutes. We were deep in reminiscing when Tom finally popped the inevitable question. Man, you've got a long drive ahead. Why don't you just crash here tonight? I wavered, but he had a point. I was in no condition to drive. Yeah, smart call, I said, then asked if I'd be taking the couch. Nah, he replied. I've got a spare room. It's basic, but beats the couch. Good enough for me. We ordered some Chinese takeout, ate, and after a bit, he showed me to the spare room down a short hallway. I was too plastered to clock the details. Tom wasn't much better off, but I vaguely noted the air felt stagnant, like the space hadn't been touched in ages. I hit the bed hard, passing out almost instantly from exhaustion and booze. I jolted awake sometime in the night. My mouth was parched, my head throbbed, and the room was pitch black save for a sliver of moonlight slipping through the blinds. That's when I saw it. Hanging on the closet door in the corner was something dark, a long shape that first looked like a trench coat on a rack. But as my eyes adjusted, it didn't sit right. The top was too wide, almost like shoulders, and it hung too stiffly to be just cloth. It felt more like a figure. My pulse raced. I didn't recall noticing it when I stumbled in, but I'd been trashed. Maybe I'd missed it. I turned over, trying to brush it off as a coat, nothing weird. But curiosity nodded me, and I stole another glance. Still there. I clenched my eyes shut, breathed deep, and willed myself back to sleep. I don't know how much time passed before I woke again, but this time it wasn't just a dry throat that stirred me, it was a sound. A slow, deliberate creak, like someone tiptoeing across old wood. My eyes flew open. Dawn was just breaking, casting a faint glow through the blinds. I whipped my head toward the corner, and my gut twisted. The coat, or whatever it was gone. I shot upright, dizziness be damned, adrenaline and hangover churning together. I swept the room with my eyes, nothing. Just an empty closet door staring back at me. I bolted out of bed, covers flying, and raced to Tom's room. He was sprawled out, snoring like a chainsaw, oblivious to the freak-out tearing through me. I shook him awake harder than intended, given how tanked he'd been. He finally stirred, groggy and squinting. The coat, I gasped. The one on the rack in the spare room. He blinked at me, dazed. What coat? The black trench coat, on the closet door. It looked almost human. Tom propped himself up, waking up fast now. Dude, I don't own a trench coat. There's no rack in there either. I gaped at him, waiting for the punchline for him to crack a grin and admit he was screwing with me. But his face stayed dead serious. Come see, I said. He groaned, but hauled himself out of bed and trailed me back to the spare room. I jabbed a finger at the spot. It was right there. Tom rubbed the back of his neck, eyeing the empty corner. You sure you didn't dream it? He asked. I know what I saw. I shot back, my voice unsteady. I woke up, it was there. I woke up again, it was gone. We stood there, the room's stillness pressing down on us like a weight. Tom finally sighed, suggesting we check the house to ease my mind. We combed through every inch, closets, rooms, corners. Nothing. No trench coat, no rack, no sign anyone had been there. The locks were secure, windows shut tight. Tom tried to chalk it up to a drunken half-dream, and I wanted to buy it better than the alternative. But I couldn't shake the image burned into my brain. Once the sun was up, I grabbed my stuff, mumbled a goodbye, and peeled out. I almost felt bad leaving Tom there alone after that mess. The drive back to Louisiana was a blur, my mind looping over that night, waking to that shadowy shape, its vanishing act by morning. Maybe Tom pulled a fast one and won't fess up, but he's never hinted at it since. Or maybe, just maybe, something was in that house with me, watching, waiting, and slipped away before dawn broke. This happened when I was 18, on a road trip in Sweden with my parents and my friend Anna. It was a family adventure, me, my folks, and Anna piling into the car for an 8-hour drive from home to hit up a theme park and camp somewhere nearby. We hadn't booked a campsite, figuring we'd sort it out when we got there. We rolled into the city where the theme park was late in the day, planning to visit it the next morning. That left us scrambling for a place to crash. With tents stashed in the car, my dad scoured the internet for a nearby campsite. He found one that looked promising and gave them a call, only to learn it was fully booked thanks to a massive soccer tournament. No prior reservation, no dice. He tried a few more places, but everything close and affordable was taken. Our only option? Find a spot in the wild. The GPS led us to a parking area in a forest to dodge any fines. We ended up at a nature reserve, a quiet gravel lot surrounded by dense woods, with a beach about 10 minutes walk away. There were a few people milling around, so we asked if it was cool to pitch our tents there. A hiker assured us it was a solid spot, no parking attendants to worry about. Good enough for us. We skipped the beach idea. Something in my gut said the lot was safer. As we unloaded, I clocked a beat-up car parked off in the corner. Empty, rusted, just sitting there. It struck me as odd. Dusk was settling in, and the beachgoers and hikers were long gone. I brushed it off, though, and got to work helping my parents set up. They took one tent. Anna and I shared another, pitched close by. After some fumbling, we got them up. Anna and I decked ours out with blankets, watched YouTube, and munched on snacks. By 11 p.m., we were winding down, aiming for a decent night's sleep before the park. My parents were already out cold in their tent. Around midnight, Anna and I were messing around on TikTok when a sharp metallic clank cut through the silence, like a shovel hitting gravel. We froze, exchanging wide-eyed looks, whispering, "What was that?" Too spooked to check the tent window, we hushed up and listened. The noise came from the direction of that lone car. Then came another sound, a scrape, like a shovel being tossed into a trunk, followed by a hard slam. My heart was hammering now. We sat there, barely breathing, as tires screeched and the car peeled out like someone was in a hurry to vanish. I shot a text to a friend in the nearby city, telling him where we were camped. His reply hit like a punch. That beach nearby was bad news, known for shady types and illegal deals. We'd had no clue. Reading that, a chill sank into me, deep and gnawing. 10 minutes of dead silence ticked by. Anna and I were just starting to unclench when a scream ripped through the night, a man's voice, raw and guttural, echoing from the woods. We nearly jumped out of our skins. I texted my mom. We just heard a scream, but got nothing back. I called her, desperate to wake her. She finally picked up, groggy, saying she and Dad hadn't heard a thing. "It's probably fine," she mumbled, but I wasn't buying it. What normal thing makes a sound like that at midnight? Anna and I huddled under the blankets, nerves shot, every second dragging like an eternity. Sleep was off the table. Then, just as the silence started to settle, my stomach lurched, footsteps. Slow, careful crunching on the gravel, circling our tents. We sat up, rigid, barely daring to breathe. I killed my phone's light, plunging us into darkness. My pulse thumped in my ears. We would be creeping around a forest parking lot this late. The steps moved from our tent to my parents', then over to our car nearby. They stopped, like whoever it was sizing us up. Silence stretched taut. Then, headlights flared as that same car roared back into the lot. Anna and I flattened ourselves against the floor as the beams swept over our tent. I risked a peek through the window, caught a door slamming before the car gunned it, and tore off again. Relief washed over me as it faded into the distance. I could see the road from where I was, and 5 minutes later, another set of lights barreled down it, a police car flying in hot pursuit. After that, nothing. The night went still. Shaken, Anna and I climbed into the locked car for safety. I stayed awake till 5 a.m., eyes peeled on the woods while Anna eventually passed out next to me. Exhaustion finally dragged us back to the tent, where we crashed hard. We woke at 9 a.m., wrecked. I spilled everything to my mom, and she admitted she'd heard the footsteps too, and something worse. When the person got close to their tent, she'd caught heavy, raspy breathing straight out of a horror flick. She'd been petrified, but didn't wake my dad, who'd slept through it all. We filled him in, and without a word, we tore down the tents and bolted. None of us wanted to stick around. The theme park was a blast later that day, but that night, I dug into the forest's history online. What I found turned my blood to ice. A man had been stabbed to death there not long before, gang-related debt gone wrong. Worse, 2 guys had vanished from that exact beach, never seen again. My mind spiraled. Was that prowler scoping us out, checking for witnesses? Were we inches from real danger? I still wonder who let out that scream. What was the shovel for in the dead of night? And the cops, what were they after? I'll probably never know. This memory still creeps up on me sometimes, even though I was just a kid when it happened. I was 6, old enough that my childhood starts to sharpen into focus. I've got one sibling, my older brother Keith, who's 2 years ahead of me. So, while I was 6, he was 8. Bedtime was non-negotiable, 8:30 sharp. If Dad caught us awake past that, we were toast. He ran a tight ship back then. I can't recall if it was a school night or not, but I woke up to Keith shaking me in the dark. We shared a big upstairs bedroom in our house while my parents slept downstairs. Groggy, I mumbled something until Keith hushed me, whispering to stay quiet and listen. So I did. And then I heard it, Mom's voice, soft and faint, calling us from downstairs. A whisper barely there. I started to climb out of bed to go to her, but Keith grabbed my arm. "Don't," he said. "I don't think that's Mom. Quit messing with me," I snapped, annoyed. I was mad he'd scare me like that. "Go listen closer," he urged. I shuffled to our bedroom door. Just outside was a short hall, bathroom on one side, a spare room where Grandma crashed when she visited on the other. To the right, a door led to the stairs down. I pressed my ear to our door, and the voice came clearer. "Keith." "Mikey." It sounded like Mom. "That's her," I told Keith. "No, it's not," he insisted. I don't know why, but as the little brother, I felt bold enough to prove him wrong. I cracked our bedroom door open, then he's toward the stairway door. The voice had stopped. "She walked away," I whispered back. "That's not Mom," Keith repeated. "Shut up, you're freaking me out," I hissed. I unlocked the stairway door and nudged it open just a sliver. Through the gap, I saw it, a woman's silhouette at the bottom of the stairs, plain as day. But it wasn't Mom. Something about her shape, her stillness, was off. "Hi, sweetie." "Come down," she said, her voice soft but wrong, like she'd spotted me. I slammed the door, locked it, bolted back to our room, and locked that too. Tears stung my eyes as Keith muttered, "I told you. We've got to wake Mom and Dad." We agreed. On 3, we screamed bloody murder, stomping the floor like our lives depended on it. It worked fast. Footsteps thundered up the stairs, and Dad pounded on the door, yelling about it being locked. We let them in, and the second they saw my tears and our pale faces, their anger flipped to worry. Mom especially. She swore she hadn't been downstairs calling us. What'd she look like? Mom asked. We couldn't say much, just a shadow, too dark to tell. Dad bolted downstairs, probably checking the house, while Mom stayed with us. After a bit, she kissed us goodnight and, unusually, told us to lock the doors again. I was too young to clock it then, but looking back, it felt like they knew something. Later, Keith and I peeked out the window when the doorbell rang. A police car sat in the driveway. We wanted to snoop downstairs, but we stayed put, too rattled. We hounded our parents after. What happened? Who was she? They'd just say they didn't know, praising us for staying upstairs. But I've always suspected they were hiding something. Even last time I saw them for dinner, I brought it up, and they brushed it off as some random break-in. It never sat right, though. How'd that woman know our names? This happened when I was 16, still in high school, carless and reliant on my mom's rides or my own 2 feet for getting around. It was a weekend, and my friend Haley was hosting a little get-together at her place since her parents were out. Her house was close, a 3-minute drive or a 20-minute walk. My mom dropped me off, single and in the mood to enjoy her night out too. She told me if she was running late, I should walk or snag a ride code for I've got a date. Haley's backyard was our hangout spot. Me, her, Tina, Courtney, and Belle, 5 of us girls, chilled there for a few hours until some guys from school crashed the scene. Haley hadn't warned me they were coming, and I wasn't thrilled. One of them, let's call him Brandon, was a guy I had a messy history with and zero interest in seeing. Haley thought she was playing matchmaker, sneaking him in to fix things. It backfired. Awkward doesn't even cover it. With 4 boys added to our 5, the vibe shifted, and I wasn't feeling it. After a while, I bailed. I'm guessing others trickled out soon after. It was late, but I just needed out of there. As I walked home, I texted Haley my frustration. She spammed me with "OMG, come back," and apologies. I let it go, but kept walking. 5 minutes in, I slowed my pace. Footsteps, distinct from mine, echoed behind me. I turned, and there he was, a middle-aged guy, hood up, hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets, smiling at me. "How you doing?" he said, casual as anything. "Hi," I mumbled, turning back to walk faster. It was the suburbs, people stroll around, even at night. No big deal, right? But 5 more minutes passed, and every glance back showed him still trailing me, maybe a bit closer each time. My route home wasn't a straight shot, turns and side streets, and he stuck with me through everyone. I texted my friends about it, nerves creeping in. Then he spoke again. "Isn't it such a nice night?" "Love this weather." "Yeah," I said, short and clipped, picking up my pace just enough to not look like I was bolting. Every word he said twisted my gut tighter. "Are you from the neighborhood?" he asked. "No," I shot back, done with this. He chuckled, a low, unsettling sound. I begged my friends to send someone, anyone. Ironically, Brandon volunteered. Of all people. Then the man said something that flipped the switch. "I'm not going to hurt you." "You live by the elementary school, right?" I spun around. He stopped, still smiling, but now it looked wrong, sharp, and fake. "Leave me alone," I yelled, breaking into a run. His footsteps pounded behind me, closing in. I screamed, "Help me," loud enough to wake the whole street, praying someone would hear. "Shut up, you little expletive," he snarled, dropping the friendly act. My shrieks must have spooked him. Lights flicked on in houses nearby, and he bolted into the dark. A couple rushed out, and I blurted that I'd almost been grabbed. I stayed by their porch until Brandon pulled up. He drove me home, a 1-minute trip, and with my mom still out, not answering texts, I didn't want to be alone. I asked him to stay. He was all too happy to, and we sat up late talking old times, trying to shake it off. Then we heard footsteps circling the house. My room faced the backyard, and the gate creaked open. Mom never came in that way. Something was wrong. I swallowed the urge to call out and instead peeked out the window with Brandon. No movement, just silence, until a man's voice cut through. "I see you up there." I gasped, stumbling back. Brandon shouted, "We're calling the cops, you expletive freak," and we did. That guy knowing my house, maybe even knowing I'd been at Haley's, chilled me to the bone. Brandon handled most of the 911 call, stepping up in a way I appreciated then and now. I was a wreck, but so glad he was there. Cops arrived fast, and just seeing them eased me a bit. Describing the guy felt like reclaiming some control. Mom got home soon after, freaked out as much as I was. They parked a patrol car on the block for a few hours, a quiet shield. After that, no more night walks for me. Even the backyard spooked me. Mom had her uncle install a full-on security system, cameras in plain sight, daring anyone to try something. That nightmare pushed Mom to sell the house a year later. She couldn't stand me living scared. We never found out who he was, what he wanted, or how he knew me. It just stopped there, thankfully.